allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening. Oh, yes, by the way. Phil DeSutter will be participating remotely due to geographic distance pursuant to 940 CMR 29.10 subsection 5E. All votes will be taken by roll call. Wow, you get a roll call every vote. Okay. Interesting. Okay. All right, so I would entertain approval for the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda, please.
Second.
All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Roll call.
By roll call.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Christie Weathers, aye.
Phil?
Phil DeSutter, aye.
Yeah, nice job. Okay. So, approval of the open session minutes of January 6th, 2020.
Motion to approve the open session minutes of January 6, 2020.
Second.
I did find one silly error in there.
What did I do?
It says the school committee was shown some of the information sheets for the MWAHS fact sheets and follow-ups. MERSD is looking to determine the best way to decimate this information.
I think it would be disseminate.
Disseminate, yeah, I'll make sure I change that.
Spell check going
It's
out of
just an
control.
E versus an I. Not a biggie.
Other than that,
I think you spelled Joe's name wrong at one point too.
Uh-oh.
Thank you.
wow, this is really bad.
Unfortunately, I have to keep him saved as my, because I never spell it
You
right.
need to put me in your
Oh, it's in there, trust me.
spell check.
All right, given those changes, all those in favor by roll call?
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Christie Weathers, aye.
Phil?
Phil DeSutter, aye.
All right. And then approval of the executive session minutes of January 6th, 2020.
Motion to approve the executive session minutes of January 6, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Lee Martin, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Christie Weathers, aye.
Phil?
Phil DeSutter, aye.
All right. Moving to student comments, but Owen isn't with us tonight.
Unfortunately, yeah, Owen had a commitment that he couldn't get out of specifically his part-time job.
I do enjoy the reports.
I do
honestly
too.
I'm not just saying that.
He's
I
got a
really do.
certain style, a certain
He
je ne
does.
sais
He
quoi.
does a very good job. Any community comments today, this evening?
I
Yep.
have a couple quick ones. One's a question and one's a comment. We wanted to share all the budget presentations with the CPAC, kind of leadership from the CPAC. And a couple of them, as far as I could tell, were missing from the website.
They are.
Okay, are those gonna be added?
They will be added
soon-ish?
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, perfect, okay. And then my comment was, in regards to a survey that, the CPAC is running. A district email just went out today, so we're gonna try to do these annually, where we survey, members of the community whose kids are supported by IEPs and 504s, just to get a sense of how things are going, positive, negative, and also get parents' feedback on how the CPAC can better serve their needs. So we're very active in collecting that feedback right now. The next few weeks, we'll sit down, review it as a board, share with Dennis, and then share with you guys. And we hope to do that every year. And the plan is at the beginning meetings of the next school year, we would potentially present some of that information back to the community. Dennis did a presentation at the beginning of the year this year that did a state of the state, essentially, for special ed, which was very well received. So our thinking is potentially every year we could do something like that, and sort of tie in the survey feedback as well. So, anyways, that's what I have.
Excellent.
I'm excited about it.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, moving on to superintendent's comments.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. First and foremost, just a shout out to our friends at MUF, our Ed Foundation. This coming Friday is, I think that we've been doing it every 2 or 3 years, but our big fundraiser with the Harlem Wizards coming into town. So what we do is we target students at the elementary and middle school level and their families we pretty much cap it around 1,000 people in the Nipmuc Gymnasium. I know over the last couple times it's literally been standing room only. So just for your purposes, I included the flyer, promote it to everybody and anybody that lives in town. It's always a good time. I know certain people who might be playing basketball and trying their absolute best to beat the Wizards, but probably won't happen.
Who's the star player for the other team?
Let's see now. Could be the superintendent. Could be. Or as a couple of the players referred to me last time as Anderson Cooper, which I thought was interesting. All right, second thing I have is just kind of as a follow-up with regard to Kaleidoscope Collective. I want to thank you guys for being so supportive. As you know, not last week, but the week before, we had the kickoff event on Thursday night, and super successful. I think we had a grand total of about 250 parents sign up and show up. I think it was a great celebration of learning that's happening across all 4 schools across the district. If you go to a website that John and Marianne have set up, which is just mursdinspires.weebly.com, you can kind of see a review of what Kaleidoscope is all about, but a really nice kind of summary of the activities that were done with the parents and with community members that were present. You know, for example, what Maureen did with regard to the Back in My Day and 10 Years From Now activity, and you can see all of the responses from the Mentimeter that people kind of did live in real time that showed up on the screen. A lot of the responses from the food for thought type prompts about grades and test scores, what does success look like, my most powerful moment of learning. So all those responses that people kind of did old school on the chart paper, they've created into word clouds, so you can kind of see the commonality as far as what our parents and community members. The film that kind of talked about Nipmuc's journey is also embedded. And then one of the things when people were returning back into the auditorium after the showcase, what people actually put for what they'd like to see and kind of sharing their thoughts based upon what they saw in the showcase. So kind of a neat little showcase of people in their own words. So if you have the opportunity, it's definitely worth checking out. Kind of related to this too, so really to be fully accepted into Collective, we had 2 hurdles. One, to have this community event, which, as I noted, and we also had some folks from DESE present that were really impressed with our showing. But they also did, just last Friday, a school visit to Nipmuc that lasted about 2 to 3 hours. They had the opportunity to visit some classrooms, touch base with students, touch base with teachers. So again, very positive feedback. So the next steps is a 2-day convening of all of the schools and districts that are in the cohort, and that's going to be held at Fitchburg State University March 10th and 11th. And I think it's really kind of, part of that convening will be drilling down a little bit more concretely in what specific goals and objectives the cohort is going to have. Okay? Next thing that we received within the last couple of weeks that I always work this into my budget presentation every year, but I thought I'd just kind of mention this individually because I think it's germane. One of the things that we're going to be striving for in this year's budget presentation is to not only talk about FY21, but also to kind of look 5 years out. I know the feedback consistently is, well, okay, it's something that you need this for next year, but what is it going to look like 2 years down the road? So we've been working very hard on putting together projections in different areas. And I think commensurate with this is looking at our enrollment. And the thing that is striking about this, this latest series of enrollment projections is it actually has us reversing the trend. And I can say for my first 8 years here, our projections always came in at either flat or actually a gentle decline sloping downward. This is the first year that it actually shows throughout the next 10 years it increasing by a little bit more than 300 students district-wide, which is statistically significant. Kind of interesting enough, as I talk about in the background notes, the overwhelming majority of this projection increase is coming from Upton. It's not coming from Mendon. So if you were to look at these enrollment projections right here, well, first I'll focus in on the regional school districts. So our real numbers, so 2071, those are all the kids in Mendon and Upton. That doesn't include our school choice kids. But it has us projecting out, as you can see, about 307 more students district-wide within 10 school years. You know, kind of a general rule of thumb, usually your 5-year projections are a lot more solid than 10-year projections, but you can see the general trend. But if you go just to Upton, so you're basically talking about Memorial kids and then the Upton kids at Muscogee in the high school, you can see on the magnitude of about, what is that, about 270 of those kids are coming from Upton. And then in contrast, when you go to the Mendon chart, you see a growth of about, what is that, 34 kids over. So I'm in the process of going a little bit deeper. You know, in the background notes, I kind of put some of the statistics with regard to, and you can look in the reports as far as the live birth rates in both communities, and then also the housing permits. Kind of trends higher. You know, I got the statistic from Kelly's office and also from Ellen Agro's office just today for 2019, because it's not in the report. But in contrast, for Mendon in 2019, there was a total of 19 single-family housing permits. In Upton, 39 single-family and 1 a 44-unit apartment complex permit. So you can see the difference as far as where the growth is. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and obviously we'll see it playing out at Memorial first and foremost. But you can basically see the trends, which I think has implications for FY21, but clearly beyond that as well. So any questions on that?
So there's you have the chart in here with the birth to kindergarten relationships.
Yeah.
And it looks like the kindergarten trends slightly higher than the birth year that corresponds to it.
Correct.
Okay. So and that
Yeah,
difference
and it's kind of interesting. We're not, here's for the entire school district. We're anticipating for FY21 next year it to probably be flat, okay, as you can see the trend here. So what this refers to is the kiddos that we got here on the start of the school year. Overwhelming majority of them were born in 2014, so you look at the 2014 data. So you can see 2015, those are the kids that'll be entering August of 2020, but then look what happened. I guess 2016 was a very good year. And you see this spike of a magnitude of, what do we got there, about, yeah, at least 30 kids or so. So generally speaking, it's not a perfect correlation, but we'll anticipate in September of 2021 a little spike in our kindergarten class.
But that variation accounts for things like choice in and out and...
No, so realize these numbers are strictly when looking at birth rates, and so on. And generally speaking, all of the enrollment projections are strictly for Mendon and Upton.
Okay.
And for the simple reason that you can't necessarily control who's born in your town, you can't control who moves into your town, you can control your choice.
Okay. Okay.
So, and, you know, and we've had this conversation at the school committee level before. Generally speaking, you know, there's a tipping point with regard to choice relative to, yes, you want a healthy amount in, but you don't want too many because then you start to lose money. So I think based upon this latest, you know, we're still in this range where as of October 4th, we had 147 choicing in and 58 choicing in. And that's generally, you know, trended pretty flat on both of those. Okay? And then, you know, again, if you go deeper, you can take a look at, you know, less kids going to career and tech schools and less kids, a downward trend going to non-public. So that would be private and parochial schools as well. So those are, you know, positive trends, and that's what we want to see. And I'd like to believe that it's based upon the quality of the education that we're offering here, but obviously it's got enrollment implications, which in turn also have budgetary implications.
Yep.
Okay. Then last but not least, you have in your packet the most current year-to-date expenditure report. Jay, is there anything in specific that you'd like to highlight about that?
No, actually, I can honestly say the last couple of weeks have been nice and calm. I haven't had any major catastrophes in any way, shape, or form. Nothing's broken. I probably shouldn't say this, but
You just completely jinxed it.
I'm not a superstitious guy, but everything's working relatively well. So right now I'm feeling okay. I mean, we're still spending money, and I think our budget's going to be very tight toward the end of the year. I don't see us like having some massive savings in any specific area. But right now, calm is good.
Thank you, Jay.
All right. Okay, good. So let's go on to the next. So we've got, next is the subcommittee updates, the budget subcommittee. We have the fiscal 2021 House 1 budget figures reported to us.
Yeah, so in your packet is the cherry sheet that was released last Wednesday, so always the fourth Wednesday in January, the governor's budget or the House 1 budget is released. And as I kind of know, unfortunately, we're in a very, very similar situation that we were in last year for the simple reason that we're one of the minimum aid districts, or sometimes known as held harmless districts. So our additional Chapter 70 aid was $30 per student, and that translates to about 0.52%, or about $65,000 additional in Chapter 70. So I have the cherry sheet up here on the screen. You can see what's happened with regard to regional school and transportation reimbursement. It's roughly a hair under $20,000, $19,715. So the bad news, as you can see, as far as the bottom line, is actually a reduction in state aid of approximately $70,000 for the simple reason that some of the offsets with regard to charter school sending tuition versus charter school reimbursement actually ends up negative and kind of negating what we gained with regard to the modest amount we gained with regard to Chapter 70 in regional school transportation. One thing that I can tell you is this year we really can't anticipate in any way, shape, or form any change in that $30 per kid as it goes through the House budget and as it goes through the Senate budget. So that number is not going to change. We may pick up something modest in regional school transportation reimbursement. Might be a little gain there. But again, I don't anticipate, anything dramatically different as we go through April and then May with regard to the House and the Senate budget. And I think very, very clear, and I think you're all very knowledgeable about this. But for anybody that might be watching this at home or watching this on the internet, with the Student Opportunity Act, the legislation that was signed last year, which goes into effect for this current school budget, realized the overwhelming majority of the money is going to a very small number of districts. The commissioner was at a meeting that myself and Maureen were at last week. 85% of the new money is going to 35 districts. And it's dramatic. For example, down the road in Milford, just for FY21 alone, they're getting $4.9 million in new cash. The city of Worcester is getting $18 million in new cash. And realize this new funding is being tiered in over a 7-year period. So it's pretty stark and pretty dramatic. High-need districts, particularly those that have a high amount of students living in poverty, a high amount of students that are English language learners, are really reaping some very, very large benefits. So just to be very, very clear, with this new funding that's coming about from the Student Opportunity Act is really with a very, very small number of districts. So I just thought I'd point that out. Just kind of as a second piece, as far as an update, our last of our series of informational meetings is for the budget subcommittee is going to be Wednesday, 7 o'clock, just down the hall at the MISCO teachers room, and it's kind of focusing on the budget drivers of the middle school and the high school programs.
And I know we talked about that during the Kaleidoscope meeting to the public that was there, so just to reiterate that, if anybody wants to come to that last meeting, we're willing to go through any questions that anybody might have on the budget. Trying to remain as transparent as possible. All right, new business. Mersian Project Lead the Way.
So we're super, super excited, and I know Dave last year in setting up the makerspace that we have in our Inspired Innovation Center here at the middle school talked a little bit about the involvement of Project Lead the Way. But I've asked Maureen and Dave to come tonight to talk about some of the exciting work that's happening and how it's positively impacting the curriculum and some future plans. And I know you've worked very ambitiously on a very ambitious grant. So welcome and share this news.
All right, thanks for having us. We have a few goals with the presentation. One is just to let you know, for those that aren't familiar, what is Project Lead the Way, and we always note it as PLTW in our slides. Why we're interested in Project Lead the Way, when we are implementing different aspects of it or hope to, and what particular modules. We'll give just like a high-level description of some of the modules we hope to implement if we get the grant funding. So I need to tell this story. This happened, I think it might have been last week. And we were in Mrs. Gervais' class, tech class, and they are currently piloting design and model. And we have the students who were working on their projects and presenting their projects. And basically what their goal is to, with this project, is to develop toys or games that students are learning about cerebral palsy and learning about what students would need to have games that would help them. And also it's for students that also would not have cerebral palsy as well. And they had to design games that would help them manage their physical dexterity and strength and try as they got better at one skill, it would get a little bit harder. So this was some of the prototypes in the class, and they were explaining, and then the classmates were giving feedback, and I got to try out a couple of the games in there. The best part, other than obviously hearing from the students, was at the end of this class, grade 5 students, Mrs. Gervais said, sorry everyone, but class is over, it's time for lunch and recess. All the grade 5 students at once, I wish I had it on camera to show you, said, aw, can't we stay a little longer? And that encapsulates what we love about the programming and what we hope to see expand. So I want to tell you that story. And Dave took this video and talking to some, Beth did, sorry, talking to some students, having them explain, so we wanted to just share straight from the students. Little clip.
Pause it for a second. Clip on my end. Turn it on the TV.
Next one up. It's down. It's up.
Turn it up on my end too.
It's not changing. It's not changing with the screens.
It's still connected. Full screen. Full back. Yeah, I'll crank that on there.
All right, maybe we'll skip this, we'll send it to you, and you'll be able to see the video.
That's pretty good.
So how you play is you roll the dice and you get 3 is this. You pull and when you pull it, it says you're doing great. And another person will go and they get a 4. A 4 is squish. Squish is play. And then 5 is twist. And this helps because it has different feelings and sensory. And if you get a 6, you open the box and you take something out. And if you get a smiley face, that's good. You see how you can see who can get 5 smiley faces first.
So these are all designed by the children themselves. It's an open-ended project, so they have to design something that they think would be interesting not only for themselves to play, but peers to play. And you can see the different forms of muscular impact and dexterity that take you the twisting motion, you have the lifting motion, you have the squeezing motion. So they're incorporating all of the items that they learned about in the activity phase into the design of the game to make it relevant and meaningful for the students that would ultimately use it. So a little bit just on what is Project Lead the Way. So Project Lead the Way is a pre-K-12 program that provides high-quality, hands-on STEM curriculum and instruction for teachers. All of the challenges that are within Project Lead the Way is focused on real-world problems, like you saw right there with the toy. An earlier project for the 5th grade design and modeling, they had to design a prototype of an orthosis to help somebody walk. And so the programs are designed by teachers in consultation with industry leaders. All of the units are aligned with NGSS standards, and also at the end
you can see that there are 3 primary pathways. The biomedical pathway, computer science, and engineering, and those are all aligned with AP standards as well. So it's a way of getting kids to do science rather than just science appreciation. We're fortunate in our district where that's kind of on the regular, but for school and districts where that's not the case, this is really getting students to see themselves in potential STEM careers. There are 3 essential phases of the Project Lead the Way programming. At the elementary level, it's called Launch. Launch has a series of 10-hour modules that are aligned to curriculum standards that teachers can implement either over the course of 2 days or spread it out over time. And again, are all aligned with either engineering, biosciences, or computer sciences to get students kind of interested in this type of work. The middle school gateway takes it up to the next level. These are 45-day courses, so 45-day modules that either fit in an elective or within a freestanding class or an existing standard class, where the students dive deeper into a particular topic area. And then at the high school, they narrow it down into those 3 pathways. You've got computer science, engineering, and biomedical science. All of those prior ones feed into, as you can see here, a pathway, and the launch and gateway basically serve as a setup for those any one of those 3 at the high school level. At the high school level, there's a series of, let's say, anywhere between 4 and 6 courses within each one of those pathways, but allows students to do a deep dive into one of those areas to see, prior to going into the workforce or into college, if this is really something that they want to be doing. So it's a good option for pre-K-12 curriculums. That's a really high floor for instructional resources and gives us an opportunity to get students with that hands-on, engaging, relevant learning. Just a kind of quick overview of what the model looks like. So at the beginning of there's usually like 3 lessons within each unit. So design and modeling for the example of 5th graders. There's a series of activities where they get some front-loaded knowledge, learn to apply some of the skills. And then at the end of the first 2 lessons, there's a project, and the project allows them to apply the skills, but it's like in a constrained event. So they, for example, every student had to design an orthosis for the students who had walking needs. For the lesson number 2, they all had to design 27-cube puzzle that they could put together in any combination. The problem is where you see that game piece of it, where they take kind of like an ill-defined challenge, like you have to build a game, right? We're not gonna tell you what the game consists of. Every game looks a little different. They have to build a prototype. So that problem is like that application transfer. It takes them to the next level. And as you can see, that this is not, while this is a nationwide problem, it's really starting to grow in the state of Massachusetts. This is something we want to get on board with because this is a lot of what our peers are doing. The other really great part of this is that the initial startup costs are all potentially grant funded. We wrote a very ambitious grant in consultation with the Project Lead the Way Northeast Regional Coordinator Suzanne Snow, who was absolutely wonderful, guiding us through the logistics of how do we maximize the application that we're putting in. I think the Inspired Innovation Center really helped in terms of having a proof of concept, so that it wasn't just pie in the sky. I think it would be really fortunate if we got all 60,000. It is in excess of like the standard grant, but I think we wrote a really compelling argument. So we'll be excited for whatever we get, but again, we're being pretty ambitious.
And a piece of the funding, we have to apply by school. So we applied for Clough Elementary, for Memorial, as well as MISCO. We'll describe what we applied for in there, but that brings it up to the total. So then, if we get approval, hopefully we will. If it's for less, then we'll have to navigate what we would implement or timeline and reevaluate. But we're encouraged because we were starting to really put in what we plan to do moving forward or hope to do.
And just as to note that the funding does not come through Project Lead the Way, it comes from the Mass STEM Hub, which is an offshoot of the Money Foundation. So
And the 1-8 Foundation, if you're not familiar, they are, this organization's really supporting a lot of really positive initiatives, research-backed initiatives in Massachusetts. And we'll talk at another time about another grant we're submitting this week for SD Math, which is also supported by them. And they're also supporting recently project-based learning training. So I don't know if you recall, we sent teachers for the PBL training. 1-8 just jumped in to support future training as well. So there's a lot of connections. So why Project Lead the Way? What was nice, I was able to go to, they have a couple conferences every year with all the schools. That's one of the requirements, and we had a starter grant this past year. So I was able to attend the conference at WPI, and they did an excellent job of an overview of the impact. They're doing studies particular to Massachusetts because they're really trying to expand the market in Massachusetts of it being across many schools, of what that impact is. And so I'm going to share just a couple of the highlights that they shared with us. But right away, it is proven that it contributes to a positive impact in math and science achievement, students' career interests, likelihood to continue their education. It helps them create those pathways to motivate them to enter careers in science and engineering. And it also, you'll see that teachers really enjoy, it's intensive, but the professional development helps them grow. So one of the areas, and I only pulled a couple data points, there's more that I can share with you if you're interested in this, but the Project Lead the Way teachers report a really strong satisfaction with the programming. And so if you note here, 60% more answered the question, yes, how has experience with change your satisfaction with teaching? And you'll find a lot of the teachers, maybe they were talking about have been teaching for a while, and then Project Lead the Way is brought in, and the intensive training, the model that they have that Dave described of application and problem-based teaching really shifts their instruction, and not only does it affect their ability in that one class, but it affects them in all the other classes that they're teaching as well, even if they're not Project Lead the Way. Students also value the courses. They report being satisfied with the courses and find these courses valuable for their school and career. So 70% agree with what I'm learning in this class is important to me because it will help me in the subjects I want to study further, which obviously really aligns to a lot of the work we're doing with real world experiences and authentic experiences for our students. When you dive deep into what the learning's all about and the practices that take place in the classroom, just by that one image we shared with you from the class that we're piloting right now, there's a clear alignment with our portrait of a learner across all areas. And it's really exciting to see that it's a nice fit for where we are right now in the district. So when will we implement it? So we have just kind of an outline for you. Even prior to 2018-19, it certainly was on our radar and something that we were aware of. But we had a lot of other things going on in district, and we started to research it further last year, and then we applied for a starter grant, and that gave us some funds to get started this year. And so in grade 5, we were trying out the design and model, which we showed you the example of. That's actually a 6, 7, 8 type of course. We tried it in grade 5, and with feedback realized that although they're having a great experience, it's not the perfect fit for 5th graders. And so our intent is to move that to the 8th grade in the future in the technology classes. We also are piloting grade 7 energy and environment in one of our grade 7 classes. And there's a lot of overlap with some of the skills and tools that they're using for that with what, if you recall a couple years ago, the Energy Day that Dave had coordinated. They were doing a lot of similar types of modules, and that's why we thought it was a good fit with the grade 7 curriculum. And then with the grant, we had put in for launch grants, and launch is, if you remember, it's K through 5, and even though grade 5's in the middle school, you have to write a grade 5 launch grant, even though it's not in an elementary school here where it's placed. And so we would do a launch for automation robotics, in 5th grade in technology, and then in grade 6, it's in a gateway automation robotics, which really expands. And then we'd expand into the second teacher with grade 7 energy and environment, and move the grade 8 design and modeling to move it to grade 8, sorry. In year 2, so the following year, then we would enter into expanding launch to grades 3 and 4, so there'd be 2 modules in each of those grade levels, and those are the 10-hour modules. And then we would expand to the grade 7 computer science for innovators in our tech classes, and the grade 8 science and technology in our grade 8 science class, which aligns with the engineering project that they work on in the standards. Now, this is a proposal. This will shift once we hear what funding, if and what funding we receive, and it can shift to just with personnel and who's available for training. So it could be in different years, but this was what we submitted in the grant for moving forward.
So just taking a look very quickly at the modules, and if you want us to go into detail, I can do that in the meeting or here. Just talk about kind of the logic of them. So grade 5 is going to do the launch, and again, those are the 2 10-hour modules. So the first one's on robotics and automation, using the plastic-based VEX kits, which is really great. We're having an emerging VEX team or interest in that after school in our elementary and even in our middle. So in the first launch program, they just build and program a robot, use the remote controls, get the basics done. And then for the robotics challenge, now they take it up to the next level where they're moving from, all right, I'm just going to control it, but I'm going to control it for a particular purpose. Then in 6th grade, so why are we doing back-to-back robotics and automation? Now we're shifting to the real VEX kits, the ones made of metal versus kind of the plastic versions. This one goes more towards some of the work we've been doing in terms of sensors and automation. So students will be building real-world objects like a traffic light or a toll booth, but are now going to be not only just robotically controlled, but are automated so that they're responding to some sort of signal. So we're kicking up to that next level. In grade 7, which is really excellent, what makes me really happy is this is actual shots from our Clean Energy Activity Day. One of the reasons why we have that program is we have a lot of the materials on hand. So students will be doing a deep dive into clean energy. Again, a really nice 45-day program. One of the limitations of the Clean Energy Activity Day was it just one day, right? So this gives us students the opportunity to do that deeper dive, get more hands-on, and then start to apply it rather than just kind of like, hey, let's build and test, to like a more authentic problem. In our tech class, grade 7 would be taking the computer science for innovators and makers, a lot of the microbit controller, which I don't know if you've had a chance to play around with them, but they are super powerful mini computer that can be integrated in all sorts of different tools and technology. It's also, they can connect via Bluetooth, so students can be programming on their iPads, changing things in real time. This ties into our Innovation Center where we're really trying to get a focus on making and fabrication, so this was a really natural fit for the work we're trying to do there. And then in 8th grade, tying in with the science of technology, again, it goes right into that, the technical aspects of our engineering challenge combined with, as we're moving into the design and modeling, moving that from the 5th grade to the 8th grade. Students, I think the 5th grade students got a really good age-appropriate experience with design and modeling. Betchervay did a really good job of making a really challenging course accessible for 5th graders, like getting the 30,000-foot view. But putting this in 8th grade will allow them to really dive deep into some of the measuring and more of the technical aspects that 5th grade just wasn't equipped for. In my home district of Seacon, they're doing this in 8th grade. So it was really nice to see our 5th graders having an opportunity to try it. Some of their isometric drawings, which we didn't include here, were just fantastic. Their ability to draw in 3D was really quite impressive. And we look forward to seeing what they do when they tackle these challenges at a deeper level in 8th grade. And then at the elementary level, there are a whole series of potential options. We just put a smattering of the close to 40 options at that level. We don't know what it's gonna look like, we want teacher input on what's relevant. We put in proposed ones that are aligned with existing curricular options. So, you know, we've got some new ones, they've got one on stability and flight and motion, structure and function of different parts, energy conversion, then, you know, the collision one, which is rather popular, but rather expensive. And then, you know, how does light impact the observation of the sun, the movement of the stars? So a lot of different access points for students with a lot of different interests to engage in STEM learning.
So I don't know if you have any questions. These are a couple additional from the other day. You know, see Mr. Marshall he was testing out the slingshot game, and the students did a great job with their presentations. But I don't know if you have questions, but we'll take them if you do.
So is this all done through the technology elective at MISCO, or is it?
No, I'm sorry, I should have clarified. All of our technology electives are going to have Project Lead the Way, but they're going to live energy, environment and the energy, and science and technology will live in the science lab.
So when we were looking to see how we could bring it in where it was a good fit, we found modules that were a good fit for technology and modules that were a good fit to begin with in our science classes as well.
Cool.
And at the elementary level, we haven't determined which modules, we put some in as suggestions, but we'll work with teachers to see what are the best fits if we do get that funding. We're 2 years out on that, for that in both schools.
Quick idea. The game design and development is a big, there's a lot of colleges in the area that have programs in game design and development, might be something interesting for kids. Quick 2 cents.
Super commendable. I mean, this is outstanding. This is everything that we should be doing with kids, just to stoke their interest and their passion and their joy about science. It's terrific. Great job, great work, both of you.
So we'll let you know.
Yeah, good luck on the grant. That's what once when we get the big, I mean,
Right, you know.
Maureen had designed it so that way, no matter how much money we get, we have viable pathways. But if we're gonna go, let's go big, let's go, you know, try to achieve the vision that we have.
Yeah, yeah.
We may have to adjust, but
When
hopefully
will
not too much.
we hear?
Yeah.
When will we hear?
I'm imagining they said March, but I don't recall. I don't think it's too, well, wait, it won't be too long.
Yeah.
We just submitted it.
And again, we work really closely with the Project Lead the Way rep, who goes in and presents this to the 1-8 Foundation. So we feel hopeful that we'll have an advocate who knows what we're trying to do, and can speak to not only the vision but also our capacity to pull it off.
Can I read the grant application?
Sure.
Sure.
Love to.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'll
Gotta
remind
find it,
you.
like, where did we see
I'll send you an email.
I think we have it in a PDF, yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, so let me see where we, okay. Next on the agenda, old business.
I don't believe there is any old business.
Correspondence then.
Okay, so 3 pieces of correspondence as I have in our background notes. First and foremost, kind of in picking up off of the Kaleidoscope Collective, you should see in there, in your packet, a note to our Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. All of the schools and districts that are in the Kaleidoscope Collective were asked by the Department of Education to request a formal waiver known as the Innovative Assessment Waiver that would basically be a waiver releasing the responsibilities for annual state testing in certain targeted areas. So as I discussed, the vision is to create some type of performance-based tasks that would serve in lieu of the traditional grade 5 and grade 8 science MCAS starting in the spring of 2021. So as you can see, a co-signed letter by Sean and myself requesting that, and I will keep you posted. But DESE is optimistic that we will be given that waiver, so we can do something alternative with regard to the science MCAS. Completely shifting gears, I also included the letter. Just, we get this every single year, but I thought it would be interesting to include this now that we're gearing up towards budget season. Letter from the Superintendent of Norfolk County Agricultural High School with the tuition rates. And you can see what the tuition rates have gone up for the next school year for out of county, which would be us, $23,634 per student. That is a significant amount of tuition per student. You can see the numbers there. We will be graduating, if all goes well, 4 students, but as you can see at present time, there are 5 students who have applied from Mendon, and there are 3 that have applied from Upton. So something to watch, because obviously, you know, the difference of 5 students is a significant amount of money.
Joe, can I just add to that? On top of that tuition, there's generally, for any kid that's on, any student that's on an IEP, an additional $5,000 charged on top of that for those services. So we do have several that are on IEPs that we're paying for. So we actually budget approximately $26,000 on average per student just to cover that.
So, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, and I think I know what you're going to ask. I apologize I didn't respond to your email, but please ask it.
I forgot his name.
I'm just wondering, how are they able to charge an in-county tuition rate of $2,000 per student?
Yeah.
But an out-of-county tuition rate of basically $24,000.
Okay, so unfortunately, it's written in state regs that they can do that, Phil. That there's a separate in-county rate for their sending districts, and then there's a separate out. Here's something that's highly problematic. Not to go off on a tangent here or anything, but there's schools that are considered to be just like Norfolk Aggie, Voc Tech schools, that do something known as saving seats, or sometimes known as selling seats. And what that refers to is there's some students that are contained within the sending area, in this case Norfolk Aggie, that are not given admission for the simple reason that the board knows that their out-of-county rate is markedly higher. So you can see, because by state regs, they can charge that amount, so intentionally they will save seats for X number of students at a much higher rate because it helps fund things much more expeditiously. So to kind of, again, the short answer to your question is they can do it because it's within the state regs that they can have that differential.
But there's also a minimum local contribution to those towns.
Yes.
So the 2,000 is on top of the MLC. So, I mean, it's not, the towns are only paying $2,000 a kid.
No. Okay, and last but not least.
We're only graduating 3, but they're saying we have 5 from Mendon and 3 from Upton.
So another thing, just kind of unzipping the whole Voc Tech conversation, is we do have some students that are genuinely interested in agriculture or animal science, or so on. But we also, every year, have students that do it as a safety option in the event that they do not get into BVT.
Right.
So that's another factor that's in play as well. Okay, and the last piece is, last but not least, again, completely shifting gears, is included in your packet is a official letter of retirement for Memorial Principal Deb Swain. Obviously, I'm sure you join me in wishing her well with regard to moving on to hopefully a very long, healthy, and prosperous retirement. But I will be, during the next meeting 2 weeks from today, kind of announcing, putting together a timeline with regard to a search process for her replacement. It'd be really nice to have maybe a couple representatives of the school committee to be a member of the screening and interview team. But it's our full intention by the conclusion of this month to have a posting out on School Spring for that position. Okay?
Okay. All right, moving on. Other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting. Seeing none. Notifying everyone of future agenda items. The Mercy fiscal year 2021 budget, the initial projections are going to be presented on February 10th, and also the approval of the 2020-2021 MERSD calendar is being done on February 10th. And with that, we're going to do a roll call to executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, exemption number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the successor agreement to the Teachers Collective Bargaining Agreement, because doing so in open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. The committee will not return to open session. And to roll call in, we have to,
Trustee Scully, aye.
Sue Martin, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Vicki Levinson, aye.
Bill?
Bill Designer, aye.
All right, with that, we'll close the open session and move on to executive session. Thank you, everybody.